The person you think you know doesn't exist. That gentle smile, those caring words, the way they seem to understand you so perfectly, it's a performance. And somewhere deep down, you've always known it. You've felt that unsettling moment when the mask slipped just for a second and you glimpsed something else underneath. You only need 2 simple tests to see who someone really is. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the hidden self that emerges when the spotlight dims. You've been there, sitting across from someone who seems so kind, so considerate, so emotionally evolved. They speak your language of empathy and growth. They mirror your values perfectly. Then you watch them snap at the waiter, or dismiss the cashier like they're invisible, or speak about those people with a coldness that makes your skin crawl. And suddenly, you're questioning everything. Was their kindness toward you even real? Here's what Jung understood that most of us miss. People don't show you who they are. They show you who they want to be seen as. The real person only appears when there's nothing to gain from the performance. The first test is devastatingly simple. Watch how they treat people who can do absolutely nothing for them. If you've ever felt invisible in someone's presence, you've already met their Carl Jung shadow. This is what I call the waiter rule, and it will change how you see everyone, including yourself. Picture Helen. She's successful, well-liked, always posting about kindness and community on social media. Her Instagram is full of quotes about lifting others up, about being the change you want to see. At the office, she's warm with her boss, charming with clients, supportive with peers who might help her career advance. She remembers their birthdays, asks about their families, offers encouraging words during difficult projects. But watch her with the cleaning staff. They might as well be furniture. When the janitor says, "Good morning," she doesn't even look up from her phone. When the security guard tries to make conversation, she gives him a tight smile and hurries past. When the cafeteria worker gets her order slightly wrong, she sighs loudly and makes a comment about competence to her colleague. These people can't promote her, can't network for her, can't give her anything she needs. So they get her truth. Indifference at best, contempt at worst. Or think about Justin. He speaks beautifully about respect and equality. In his dating profile, holds doors for women. He finds attractive, remembers the names of his friends' girlfriends, posts supportive comments on women's achievements. But watch him with older women, or women he doesn't want to sleep with, or children. He becomes impatient, dismissive, barely present. His kindness has a very specific audience, and that audience is always potential benefit to him. This selective compassion isn't random, it's shadow projection. When someone treats certain people as less than, they're unconsciously dumping their own unhealed sense of inferiority onto others. They need to feel superior to someone, anyone, to escape the painful truth of their own inadequacy. The waiter becomes the repository for their shame. The cashier becomes the target for their self-hatred. Jung said, "The persona is what one would like to be, not what one truly is." The persona is that carefully crafted mask we all wear in public. It's our resume version of ourselves, polished and professional and saying all the right things. But here's the thing, maintaining a mask is exhausting. Performing goodness takes enormous energy. So we choose our audience carefully. We perform for those whose opinion matters, whose approval we need, whose power we fear or respect. But when someone can't give us anything, no status, no validation, no advantage, no threat, the mask comes off. The waiter who brings our food, the janitor who cleans our office, the stranger asking for directions, the elderly person walking slowly in front of us, the child who interrupts our important conversation. These people become mirrors reflecting back our unguarded shadow. How we treat them reveals the contents of our unconscious, the parts of ourselves we're too ashamed to admit, too afraid to face. Maya learned this the hard way. She was dating someone who seemed perfect, thoughtful gifts that showed he really listened, deep conversations about meaning and purpose, emotional intelligence that made her feel truly seen and understood. He was everything she'd been looking for after years of disappointing relationships. He made her feel special, chosen, like she'd finally found her person. Until she started noticing how he spoke to service workers. The subtle condescension when the barista took too long. The way he'd complain about incompetent staff loud enough for them to hear. The impatience with anyone he deemed beneath him. The way he'd speak about his ex-girlfriend's lower-class family with barely concealed disgust. She realized with growing horror that his kindness toward her wasn't kindness at all. It was investment. She was valuable to him. So she received his performed self, his carefully curated version of goodness. Everyone else got his truth, judgment superiority, casual cruelty, disguised as standards. When kindness changes with audience, you're looking at a mask, not a soul. When respect requires benefit, you're seeing strategy, not character. But here's where it gets uncomfortable, where the mirror turns toward you. This reflection works both ways. If you're brutally honest with yourself, can you think of times when your patience ran thin with someone who couldn't benefit you? When you dismissed someone's feelings because their opinion didn't matter to your life? When you were less than kind to someone who couldn't impact your future? The Carl Jung Shadow lives in all of us. The question isn't whether you have one, it's whether you're willing to see it, acknowledge it, and consciously choose not to let it drive your behavior. Take a moment, right now. Think about the last week. Really think. How did you treat the person who checked you out at the store? The person who delivered your food? The stranger who interrupted your day with a question? The child who was loud on the plane? The elderly person who took too long at the ATM? Your answers might reveal more about you than you're comfortable knowing. But that discomfort, that's where growth lives. That's where integration begins. The people we treat worst are often the people who trigger our own unhealed wounds around powerlessness, invisibility, or feeling unimportant. We project our shadow onto them because seeing their vulnerability reminds us of our own. The second test is even more revealing, more terrifying in its accuracy. Give someone power and watch what happens to their soul. Power doesn't change people. It unmasks them. It strips away the social contracts that keep our shadows in check and reveals what was always lurking beneath the performance. Jung understood that power removes our need to perform, to please, to maintain social bonds through artificial kindness. When consequences disappear, when we no longer need others' approval to survive or thrive, the raw shadow emerges like a beast that's been caged too long. Research by psychologist Dasher Keltner confirms what Jung intuited as power increases, empathy decreases. Brain imaging shows that people in positions of power literally lose the neural pathways associated with understanding others' perspectives. But it's not that power corrupts, as the old saying goes. It's that power reveals. The corruption was always there, hidden beneath layers of social necessity and survival instinct. Think about Elena. For years, she was the understanding girlfriend, never demanding, always accommodating, the perfect partner who never caused problems. She made herself indispensable through her flexibility, her willingness to adapt to her boyfriend's needs, her emotional caretaking. She was proud of how low maintenance she was, how easy to love. Then they moved in together. Suddenly, she had emotional leverage, security. The knowledge that he had invested in their relationship signed a lease, intertwined their lives. And something shifted. The sweet requests became commands. "Could you maybe do the dishes?" became, "Why are the dishes never done when I get home?" The flexibility became rigid control. The understanding became judgment. The accommodation became demands for accommodation, in return with interest. Her friends said she changed, but she didn't change. She finally felt safe enough to show who she'd always been underneath the people-pleasing performance. The power imbalance had simply shifted, and her shadow seized the opportunity. This is the archetypal battle that Jung wrote about, the ruler versus the tyrant. Healthy power serves others. It uses influence to lift up, to protect, to create space for growth. Shadow power controls. It uses influence to dominate, to diminish, to make others smaller, so the ego feels bigger. Or consider James. He was everyone's friend for years, helpful, collaborative, supportive of his colleagues. He genuinely seemed to care about fairness and teamwork. He was the guy people went to with problems, the one who always had time to listen, who offered to help with projects even when he was overwhelmed with his own work. Then he was promoted to manager. Within months, former peers were describing him as arrogant, dismissive, power-hungry. He started playing favorites, making unilateral decisions without consulting the team, taking credit for others' ideas, speaking down to people who had been his equals just weeks before. The promotion didn't transform him. It gave him permission to express what he'd been suppressing. All that helpful, collaborative behavior. It was unconscious strategy building social capital for exactly this moment. The shadow had been patient, but it had been planning. Jung wrote, "Where love rules, there is no will to power. Where power predominates, love is lacking." This is why it's crucial to watch someone get a taste of power, any power, a promotion at work, a relationship where they feel secure, a position of authority in a volunteer organization. Even small power, like being the one with the car keys or the credit card or the social media password. Do they become more generous or more controlling? More understanding or more judgmental? More collaborative or more domineering? Do they use their influence to lift others up or to keep others down? Here's the psychological truth that most people miss. Individuals who have integrated their Carl Jung shadow remain stable regardless of external circumstances. Their kindness doesn't fluctuate with their power level because it comes from wholeness, not strategy. Their respect for others doesn't depend on what those others can do for them because it comes from self-respect, not insecurity. But those carrying unhealed shame, unprocessed anger, or hidden superiority complexes, power becomes their drug of choice. Finally, they can express what they've been hiding. Finally, they can make others feel small the way they've always felt inside. Finally, they can stop pretending to care about people they've always seen as beneath them. I think about David. He spent years complaining about how badly he was treated by previous managers. He had stories of micromanagement, unfair expectations, favoritism, cruelty disguised as leadership. He swore that when he got his chance, he would be different. He would be the manager he wished he'd had. Then he became one. Did he use his painful experience to treat others better? No. He became exactly what he had resented, only worse. Because now it was his turn. Now he could be the one with power, the one making decisions, the one who didn't have to care about other people's feelings. This is shadow compensation in action. Years of feeling powerless created a hungry shadow that devoured any opportunity for dominance. The very wounds that should have made him more compassionate made him more cruel, because he had never processed them, never integrated the pain into wisdom. The most dangerous people aren't those who are openly difficult from the beginning. It's those who are kind only when they need to be, and cruel as soon as they don't need you anymore. These are the people who will surprise you, who will shatter your faith in your own judgment, who will make you question whether you ever really knew them at all. You've probably experienced this betrayal. Someone who was sweet as honey when they wanted something from you, then turned cold the moment you couldn't provide it. Someone who was charming during the courtship phase, but controlling once they felt secure in your commitment. Someone who was collaborative as a peer, but authoritarian as a boss. Someone who was supportive when they needed your support, but absent when you needed theirs. They didn't change. They revealed. And here's the hard truth that will save you years of heartache and confusion. If someone's kindness disappears when they gain power over you, it was never kindness. It was strategy. If their respect evaporates when they no longer need your approval, it was never respect. It was manipulation. The Carl Jung Shadow has been patiently waiting for its moment. Power just opens the door and invites it in. So what do you do with this knowledge? How do you protect yourself without becoming cynical? How do you stay open to love while guarding against manipulation? First, you accept reality. If someone only respects those they need or grows cruel with any advantage, they will eventually turn on you. This isn't pessimism, it's pattern recognition. This isn't being negative, it's being smart. Stop trying to be the exception to someone's pattern. Stop thinking you're special enough to escape someone's shadow indefinitely. Stop believing that your love can heal someone's unconscious cruelty. When they no longer need your approval, your support, or your presence, when the power dynamic shifts or their circumstances change, you'll discover who they really are underneath the performance. And it will hurt, because you'll realize that what you thought was genuine connection was actually conditional kindness. What felt like love was actually need. What seemed like respect was actually fear of losing something valuable. Watch early, trust slowly, set boundaries and enforce them consistently, especially when it's uncomfortable. Remember, Alexandra. She ignored every red flag because she wanted to believe in the person her partner could be, not who he was showing himself to be. She made excuses for his rudeness to servers. He was just stressed from work. She rationalized his controlling behavior. He was just concerned about her safety. She dismissed his cruelty to those beneath him. He was just having a bad day, and everyone deserves compassion for their struggles. She performed elaborate mental gymnastics to avoid seeing what was right in front of her, because seeing it would mean losing the fantasy, losing the hope, losing the version of him she had fallen in love with. It would mean admitting that her judgment had been wrong, that her needs had made her blind, that her desire for love had overridden her instincts for safety, until the day she became one of those people in his eyes, until she needed help instead of providing it, until she showed weakness instead of strength, until she couldn't give him what he wanted when he wanted it. That's when she met his shadow face to face. That's when she realized the man she thought she knew had never actually existed. But here's where it gets interesting, where the real growth opportunity lives. This isn't just about protecting yourself from others' shadows. It's about facing your own Carl Jung shadow, integrating your own capacity for cruelty and control. Ask yourself the hard questions. Do I honor people who can give me nothing? Do I remain kind when I have power? Do I treat the vulnerable with the same respect I show the influential? Am I the same person, whether I'm talking to my boss or the janitor, whether I'm single and dating or married and secure, whether I'm broke or financially stable? Because here's what Jung knew that most people miss. Every judgment you make about others is also a mirror for your own unconscious patterns. Every shadow you recognize in someone else is also a shadow you carry within yourself. When you notice someone's selective kindness, ask yourself, where am I selectively kind? When you see someone abuse power, ask yourself, how do I behave when consequences disappear? When you feel disgusted by someone's treatment of those beneath them, ask yourself, who do I see as beneath me? The shadow you recognize so clearly in others is often the shadow you haven't integrated in yourself. The behaviors that trigger you most strongly are usually the behaviors you're most capable of under the right circumstances, with the right justifications, when you think no one is watching. This isn't about self-attack or shame. It's about self-awareness. It's about becoming conscious of your unconscious patterns so you can choose differently. It's about owning your capacity for darkness so it doesn't own you. True strength isn't avoiding difficult people. It's developing the self-awareness to avoid becoming one. Real protection isn't building walls against others' shadows. It's integrating your own shadow so you can see clearly, respond consciously, and maintain your integrity, regardless of external circumstances. Stay financially independent so you never have to accept mistreatment for survival. Maintain emotional sovereignty so you don't lose yourself in someone else's dysfunction. Don't make yourself so small, so accommodating, so desperate for love that someone else's cruelty starts to feel like home. And most importantly, do the inner work. Face your shadow. Integrate your capacity for selfishness, cruelty, and control, so that kindness becomes your conscious choice, not your unconscious compensation for guilt or fear. This is where Jung's real wisdom emerges. Seeing shadow isn't about judging others, it's about individuation, the sacred process of becoming whole. When you can see the two-faced nature of unintegrated people, you're also seeing an invitation to examine your own masks, your own power dynamics, your own unconscious cruelty. Real kindness doesn't change with circumstances. Real respect doesn't fluctuate with power. Real love doesn't depend on usefulness. The person who treats the janitor with the same courtesy as the CEO has done the shadow work. The person who remains humble with authority has faced their hunger for dominance. The person who shows up authentically, regardless of audience, has integrated their persona and shadow. This is individuation, not perfection, but integration. Not the absence of darkness, but the conscious choice to not let darkness drive. Think about someone you truly respect. I bet they're the same person whether they're talking to a child or a celebrity, whether they're powerless or powerful. Their character has a consistency that feels safe, trustworthy, real. That's what integration looks like. So the next time you feel invisible in someone's presence or uncomfortable with how they treat others, trust that instinct. You're not being judgmental, you're being perceptive. And the next time you catch yourself being short with someone who can't benefit you or drunk on a little power pause, that's your shadow asking to be seen, acknowledged, and ultimately transformed. Walking away from manipulative people isn't cruelty, it's boundaries. Protecting your energy isn't selfishness, it's self-respect. You don't owe anyone your attention just because they perform kindness for you. You don't owe anyone forgiveness for their unconscious cruelty. But you do owe yourself the courage to look in the mirror they're providing. Character isn't built in grand moments. It's revealed in how you act when no one is watching and when you believe no one can stop you. The two tests, powerlessness and power, strip away all performance and show you the truth. Use them wisely, but use them on yourself first. Will you only see the Carl Jung shadow in others, or will you dare to face your own reflection? True sight isn't about becoming suspicious of everyone. It's about becoming conscious of the unconscious patterns that run both them and you. If this resonated with you, you're already doing the work. Keep going. Share your insights in the comments, and remember, what you see in others is what you're being asked to integrate within yourself. The shadow once seen loses its power, but only if you have the courage to keep looking.